Well, for Europe, it was a year when the cash ran out in some countries. But one thing that wasn't in short supply was the number of angry protesters. As governments severely cut back on budgets, hundreds of thousands of people lashed out in response. RT's Laura Emmett wraps up what's been a troubled year for Europe and why people should brace themselves for 2011.
The summer of discontent that became a winter of woe for a Europe in crisis. Across the continent, tens of thousands repeatedly turned out to protest against their governments, often resulting in violence and destruction. And it's not over yet. After a brief holiday hiatus, most are sure the unrest will return in the new year, and we haven't seen the worst of it yet.
January 31st, February the 1st, boom, on the door mat will fall the credit card bills. People will be beginning to lose their jobs. People have been living, there's proof of this, on their credit cards to pay their mortgages. They're going to start defaulting. That's when the real protests are going to start happening.
In the UK, it was a huge hike in college fees that sparked the violence. In Ireland, the country's near collapse forced its toughest ever budget to secure an EU and IMF rescue. In Greece and Spain, public sector pay slashed while taxes rise. For the French, it's the prospect of being forced to work longer. All measures which ensure working people pay for the mistakes of bankers and governments. Hard-up Britons enduring the harshest cuts since the Second World War are also reeling over forking out around $12 billion for EU membership.
And as we've seen the contribution rise, I think it's gone up by 2.9%. Unfortunately, that is, it's enough to get people actually quite red in the face, quite hot-headed, because we are having to see massive cuts here. Local authorities are cutting back on their frontline services, and actually we don't feel, as the British people, that we get that much from the EU. We put a lot in and we don't get an awful lot out.
London's biggest protest of more than 50,000 fell on deaf ears as inside the House of Commons members voted to make students pay 3 times as much for their diplomas. But they insist the vote hasn't dampened their spirits.
What Parliament can do, the streets can undo, the movement can undo, in fact, and we believe that we still have the chance of defeating the higher education bill, which is going to be debated in the new year.
So far in the UK, students and trade unions have been the most vocal, but veteran politician and campaigner Tony Benn says the next move would be to form a united front.
Solidarity, so that students support pensioners who are finding their pensions at some disadvantage. Public servants support those whose benefits are being cut, till the thing becomes a very, very powerful political movement for justice. And once that happens, governments have to listen.
Right now, the cuts are on paper, but once they begin to bite, so too will an increasingly angry public. Not even the Christmas tree on Trafalgar Square emerged unscathed from this winter's violence. An annual gift from the people of Norway and a symbol of peace and goodwill, protesters tried to set fire to the tree and daubed graffiti on Nelson's column nearby. And this isn't the end of civil unrest in the UK or across Europe, as governments continue to dig their way out of the crisis by forcing austerity onto the people vow to continue opposing them. Laura Emmett, RT, London.